Hello and welcome to this week's Facebook Live. Thank you for joining us. My name's Craig. I'm from mansioningles.com and from inglespodcast.com. And with me is Lynne. Hello, Lynne.
Hi, Craig. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
My camera, so I'm the same size as you. There you are. I don't like being little.
Lynne is from putitlikethis.com. And why don't you tell them about your website, Lynne?
Okay, put it like this. What I'm trying to do is to give you a voice, your voice in English. So if you're learning English as a second language, sometimes it's difficult to express yourself the way you want to express yourself in English. So that's the idea behind the name of the company, and it's really behind most of the courses that I do. So if you've got something that you have to do, a real objective, like make a presentation in English, or maybe you have to write in English, or maybe you're preparing for exams as well. I also do exam work, but basically I tailor make the courses to fit your objectives. And the idea is that you put yourself in English like the way you want to. That's the idea behind it.
And it sounds wonderful. And the website is really attractive and worth looking at. So go over there to putitlikethis.com. And this brief explanation of who we are is really for people who are watching the replay on Facebook Live. So thank you for spending time with us and watching the replay. And I think people are starting to join. Olivia's here from Huelva in Spain. Hi, Olivia.
Yeah. Hello.
Rodrigo Cesar from Mejia.
Mejia. Don't know where that is.
Rore Mejia. I'm not sure where that is.
Where are you from, Rodriguez? Maybe you can tell us. We don't know where Lore Mejia is.
It says it's from Boston. Hello from Boston.
From Boston. Wow. Oh, wow. Great. Hello.
What's the weather like in Boston, Cesar? Is it snowing there yet? They have cold winters up there in Boston. It gets very, very cold this time of year. Okay. Who else is with us? Juanlu from Malaga. Welcome.
Welcome.
People are coming in. It's fantastic to see you all. Thanks for joining us. Lynne, what are we speaking about this week?
Oh, well, today we thought we would talk about air travel. And what we're actually going to tell you about are our anecdotes, our stories about traveling by air. And we hope you like them.
We hope you like them, and we hope you join us at the end and come in and speak to us. I will give the link towards the end of the session so that you can come in and practice your English and tell us some of your stories about, some of your anecdotes about traveling and flying to different places. But before we begin and explain the 4 different categories that we have for our anecdotes, just quick revision of the verb to fly, because it is irregular. The past tense of fly is flew, the same vowel sound as you or to or blue.
Or the flu when you have
the flu.
FLU, but flu.
So yesterday I flew, and the past participle flown. Okay, so fly, flew, flown, and the noun, of course, is flight.
Yeah, it's quite a tricky piece of vocabulary, that, isn't it? Lots of different spellings there and everything.
So remember that we'll probably be using those words quite a lot. And we're going to speak about 4 separate categories of flights. What are they, Lynne?
Okay, so we're going to talk about the most eventful flight that you've ever had. Now, the word eventful means when something unusual happens out of the ordinary. All right. So a flight that you've taken that has been very eventful. So Craig and I are going to tell you about our most eventful flights ever. The thing is, obviously not everybody flies a lot, but we're English teachers and we work abroad. So I suppose we have flown quite a lot. So we've got a few flying anecdotes. Yeah. Then we're going to talk about our most disastrous flight. Disastrous. It's quite difficult to say. Disastrous. And disastrous is when something bad happens in the flight, when it's a disaster. Okay, so things don't go according to plan. So that's the disastrous flight. And then the last 2, I think, are easier to understand. The longest flight we've ever had. Often flying can become very tiring. And so I'm sure we've all got an idea of a longest flight we've ever had. and the best flight. What flight do you remember that was really lovely, that you remember very well? Okay.
So we'll start in a second with most eventful flights. We're just being joined by more people, which is fantastic. People from Mexico, from Argentina, Andrea from Argentina, Veronica, hi. Leila, hello. Felipe.
In Australia, down under.
I'm going to speak about Australia later. That was one of my memorable flights. So hello to everyone. Thanks for joining. Right, let's go. Let's start. What's the first category we have? The most eventful. So over to you, Lynne, to tell us about your most eventful flight.
Well, this is a bit of a long story. I'll try to keep it short. But my most eventful flight ever was I say it was a domestic flight. Now, a domestic flight is a flight that happens within the same country. That's called a domestic flight. And the opposite of a domestic flight would be an international flight, right? So that's from one country to another. And I've actually just realized right now that I've told a lie, because actually the most eventful was not a domestic flight. It was an international flight, but it was a very small flight between Botswana and the neighboring country, Zimbabwe. So it was a very short flight.
So it was international, but short.
It was short, yeah. So it's not officially, technically, it's not a domestic flight, but it wasn't an overseas flight. Okay, it was just a very short flight, which was, I think it took about an hour or an hour and a half maximum, and it was between a place in Botswana that was quite remote. Remote means it wasn't a built-up city, and it was going to Victoria Falls in Zimbabwe, which is also quite a small place in Zimbabwe. So I set the scene first for my story. Okay, so I was in Botswana and I was on a safari, and I had been traveling for 4 days in a canoe in the Okavango Delta. And there were no hotels, obviously, and I was in a canoe for 4 days. So I hadn't really washed, and we hadn't been able to shower. And every night we slept on the riverbank in a tent. And then the next day we continued going through this Okavango Delta in canoes. And when this part of the trip was over, which was 4 days, we were transferred by Jeep. So we got into a very dusty Jeep and we were riding off-road, and we got to this airport in Botswana. And you can imagine that I was super dirty, a bit smelly, and I didn't really look like as if I was about to board a plane. Right? I wasn't really in the right condition to board a plane, but neither were my traveling companions. My traveling companions, we were a group of about 6 people. And so anyway, so I thought, well, we're in the middle of Africa. We're in the middle of the Okavango Delta. And I thought, that's okay. I'm sure that this plane is not very posh. Posh? Do you know what posh means? Tell them what posh means, Craig. What does posh mean?
Expensive, high class, very fancy, very new.
Right. So I thought, okay, I'm in the middle of Africa. I'm in the Sahara. And this flight will be like, it'll be okay to get on this flight being dirty and smelly. And much to my surprise, in the airport, which was a very basic place, there was one runway and there was one building, and it didn't look very fancy at all. Suddenly, the plane lands, the plane arrives on the runway, and it was a brand new plane. Now, we've got that word up there, brand new, which means that it was completely new. It was like it had never been used before. It was beautiful. This plane landed and it was brand new. And the door opened, and then the stewardesses came out, and they were from Botswana Air, which was the national airline of Botswana. And these stewardesses were beautiful, and they were smart, and they had these beautiful suits on and their little hats, and they just looked like you were in New York. And it was all shiny and everything was new. And then me and my travel companions, we were all dusty, we were dirty, we had rucksacks with us. I mean, we did not look like we should be boarding this plane. But anyway, we got on the plane and we sat down, and I was trying very hard not to make a mess, because I really was dirty. I mean, the sand was coming out of my hair and everything. I was sitting in this lovely seat in the plane, and then they closed the doors and we took off to fly to Victoria Falls. And then the stewardesses behaved just like you would expect on a really top class flight. So they came along with the drinks trolley. Now, the drinks trolley on a plane is that little cabinet, which is on wheels. It's called a drinks trolley, and they push it and then they say to you, what would you like to drink? And of course, we were not expecting this, because I had been drinking horrible oxidized or you know when you have to filter the water in Africa and it comes out red,
or so use those tablets to purify the water, and it tastes horrible.
So for the previous 4 days I had not drinking anything that was remotely nice. So of course, when this beautiful lady comes along with the drink trolley and said, what would you like to drink? We thought, wow, we have died and gone to heaven. Everything's wonderful. So we all ordered like a nice drink. I think I actually ordered a gin and tonic. And I got this lovely gin and tonic. And so we were sitting there feeling very happy. And then the lady took the drinks trolley away, the stewardess, and then she brought out the meal service. So she brought out a different trolley, and they were beginning their meal service on the flight. That's what we call it, meal service, when they give you the meals. And so she came to us first, and she opened the mails, the trolley, and she brought out a tray. The tray is the thing that it's like a plate, and it has all your dishes on it, all your food. So she brought out the tray and she gave it to me, and she gave it to my travel companion. And then she started going backwards up the plane, giving because I was sitting at the front of the plane. And on the meal service, on the tray, you know how you have a little bread roll, a little bread bun, and you have butter. So I started to open my bread roll and I started to butter, and I had a little salad, and I took my fork and I was starting to eat my salad, which was the starter. And suddenly the lady, the stewardess, shouted on the plane, and she said, stop. And we all stopped eating. And she said, there has been a mistake. Not one meal each. It's one between two. And she came back down to the front of the aisle, and she took my meal tray and gave it to somebody else. And I couldn't believe it, because we had to share the meal. And she even took away my tray, even though I had started to eat, and she gave it to another passenger.
What, was that because you hadn't paid enough money, or
no,
why was that?
No, it was because in the trolley, she obviously realized that she had more passengers than meals, and that was her way of improvising. And she shouted, "It's one between two," and took the tray away. And the last word on the banner there is gobsmacked, because that's how I felt. I felt gobsmacked. Now, that word describes how you feel. It's kind of like the feeling if somebody was to hit you across the face. This is your gob. It's not a very nice word for your mouth, but in colloquial English, it's called gob. And gobsmacked is when somebody hits you. And we use that word gobsmacked when you are speechless, because everybody was so shocked in the plane that we just went like that. And so I held on very tightly to my gin and tonic, because that was going
to be my question. Did you have to share the gin and tonic,
or
could you drink it by yourself?
No, I got to keep my gin and tonic, but I couldn't eat my meal, and I had to share with my partner.
That's one of those things on holiday that you remember as being so funny when you look back. But at the time, it's just like you say, you're gobsmacked. You don't understand what's going on, what's happening. It's so unusual.
And it was really unusual because it was such a beautiful plane and the stewardesses were so smart and it looked like we were having top quality service. And it never happened to me on a plane that somebody has taken away my food and said I had to share with somebody else. Has it ever happened to you?
Well, I'm going to give you an anecdote a bit later when we talk about another category that's the opposite to that. So let's wait until I tell that anecdote. By the way, if you have any questions about our anecdotes, if you want to ask for more details, please write the questions in the chat box. Also, if you have any questions about vocabulary that's on the screen or vocabulary that we're using as we're telling our anecdotes, please write us a message. And we're already getting some people saying that, for example, Carlos is speaking about his longest flight from Spain to Egypt. Olivia says she loves flying. Yeah, me too. Absolutely love flying. Not so much flying, but where I'm flying to. That's the exciting thing.
Yeah.
And also that Coque said that she's flown from Spain to the Netherlands several times because of family. Right. Shall I tell you mine?
Yes, please. Your most eventful flight.
So my most eventful flight was domestic. So it was inside the UK and it took off from a small place called Biggin Hill, which is in the south of England, not far from London. And here are my words that I'm going to use as I'm telling my anecdote. Airstrip, parachute, sponsored, to fancy, count to 3, hit the ground hard.
Wow.
And this is an eventful flight. Well, an airstrip is just the small strip of land that Lynne called before a runway. And I'm guessing that where you took off from, Lynne, in Botswana was also like an airstrip. It wasn't a big airport. International. Well, it was international, but it wasn't a huge airport. It was an airstrip. So it's very small, very provincial, a very small area where small planes take off and land. And what was eventful about this flight for me was that I didn't actually land. I jumped out of the plane while it was flying along. Why did I do that? A long time ago, when I was working in a pub in London, I was working as a barman, and a friend of mine who was a girl working with me who I actually really fancied. And to fancy someone is to be attracted to them. So there was someone who I was working with in the pub who was very attractive to me, and I fancied her. And she told me one day that she was going to do a parachute jump sponsored for charity. So she was collecting money, and some of the money went to pay for the parachute jump, and the extra money was going to a charity. And because I fancied her, I said, "Oh, I'll do that with you. I'll do the same thing, and we can get more money for the charity." So that was not your primary motive, was it? That was not your primary motive. I had another motive. I had an ulterior motive, yes. So I basically got people to sponsor me. They paid me money to do this parachute jump. We went to Biggin Hill Airstrip and did a weekend training. Now, it wasn't the kind of parachute jump where you had to pull the rip cord so that the parachute opens. It was connected to the plane. So the only thing you had to do was jump from the plane. So they taught you how to jump from the plane and how to safely land on the ground. And they said, no, when you jump from the plane, count to 3 and then look up and check that the parachute is open. And if the parachute isn't open, you pull the emergency parachute that's around your waist.
That sounds really scary. Already, that makes me scared.
So, of course, when you're training and you're jumping just a meter from the ground and you're training before you take off in the plane, you say, okay, jump, push, outside, look up, 1, 2, 3, check. Okay, everything's fine. But when you actually jump, you go 1, 2, 3, ah! And because you're counting, because you're so worried that the parachute is going to open. And the second thing is, what they didn't tell me was how hard you actually hit the ground. Now, I wasn't injured, I didn't break anything, but it was really a shock and a surprise that when you landed on the ground and the parachute took you down, you had to bend your knees and roll with your body. And I really hit the ground hard, which was a shock. But that was my eventful flight, the fact that I didn't actually finish the flight. I jumped out in the middle.
You jumped out in the middle. Now, I want to ask you, can I ask you a question? Has anybody got a wonderful question for Craig? If you have a question about this anecdote, put your question in the chat file.
Well, Carlos is saying that a parachute jump is easy. It's not, Carlos, because it's not a natural thing to do. And I don't know if anyone has done a bungee jump. That's very similar.
I've done a bungee. Mm-hmm.
It's not a natural thing to throw yourself out of an aeroplane, to throw yourself off of a bridge. Your brain doesn't want you to do that. Your instincts, your instincts, everything in your body is telling you not to do it. And that was the difficult thing, was convincing myself that it was safe and I was going to be okay.
Mm-hmm. So has anybody asked the question yet? Oh, I've got to ask it. Can I ask it? Nobody.
Go on then. Ask the question then.
I want to know what happened to the girl. Was she impressed with your parachute jump?
Oh, nothing happened. We went back to working in the pub and we stayed friends, but romantically, nothing happened. So I jumped out of an aeroplane not for nothing, because I enjoyed the experience, but romantically, it wasn't very productive.
Mm-hmm. Oh, now Juan Lu is asking the question I just wanted to ask. Can you put that one up? Would you repeat the parachute jump? She asks, Juan Lu.
Well, it's interesting you say that, Juan Lu, because later, a few years later, I had the opportunity to do another parachute jump, and it was a complicated situation where I was in a queue, I was in a line to volunteer to do a parachute jump, and I decided, my mind went back to the experience I had jumping out of the plane, and I decided not to do it. So there's an expression in English to chicken out.
Oh.
Chicken. The phrasal verb to chicken out is to have second thoughts, to rethink, to not have the courage to repeat the same thing twice. So I did have an opportunity to do another jump, and I decided not to. But like Lynne, I have done a bungee jump, which is quite similar, because you're also jumping, and instead of trusting the parachute, you're trusting the bungee, the elastic that's going to save you. So it's a similar thing.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Okay, people are already asking. Ruth saying she would like to know if you do this often, Craig, or is it a one-time thing? If you plan to do it more times, how can she find out when will be the next one? I think you have a fan base there. We'll all be standing on the ground waiting for you to land.
Ruth, these are stupid things I did when I was a lot younger, and these days my idea of adventure is going outside without an umbrella. That's as adventurous I get these days. Walking outside when it's cloudy without an umbrella is as adventurous as I get. Christine's remembered an expression that we've used before, to get cold feet. Very good. Yes, I did get cold feet. I chickened out of the second
jump.
The second jump. Okay, let's move on to the next category, which is the most disastrous.
Now there's our pronunciation again. Craig, you say the word
disastrous.
Disastrous, you say, and I say, I'm from the north, disastrous.
So but it's the same thing as before. What was the word last time? Do you remember?
We had. And,
I can't remember the word.
Cast a vote, we said last time. And you said
cast. You say cast and I say cast. It's the same vowel sound, the A and the R. My vowel sounds a little longer, and Lynne's is a bit shorter.
Okay, so the most disastrous flight I ever had was from Spain to Germany. And I have 3 children, and my first 2 children are twins. And when the twins were only 4 months old, I was living in Germany at the time, and we had come to Spain to have the twins christened with the family in Spain. And we were returning from Spain to Germany. Now, if anybody has children, if anybody has babies, you, especially the first babies you ever have, anytime you move anywhere with a newborn baby, it's kind of like a military operation because, because the babies have to have food every 4 hours. And then when they have food, they have to have their nappies changed. And then you have to get the air out after they drink. Then you change the nappies, and then they sleep. And then after 3 hours, it all starts again. It's like food and nappy and burping, and that's what happens. And when you have twin babies, it's even worse, because obviously I only have 2 hands. Fortunately, my husband was traveling with me, so we had a baby each. But you have to imagine, when you're actually traveling with twin tiny babies, you have to go through the airport with a double buggy. I don't know if I've got that there, but it's in another one, I think. But you have to go with the pram, and you have to time everything with the babies correctly, because if, for example, they get hungry while you are going through passport control, you know that they're going to scream the place down, right? So it's a real military operation. So my husband and I had planned everything, right? So we went to the airport, we fed the babies before we actually went through passport control. While we were waiting to board the plane means when you get on the plane. So while we were waiting to board the plane, we changed their nappies. And then we got on the plane and we sat down in our seats, and each of us had 1 baby, because they're so small, they can't sit. So you have to keep them in your hands. And then it was time for the plane to take off. We had the verb in the last story, to land, and then to take off is when the plane begins its journey. And often when you take off, I don't know if you've had this problem, but ears pop. So sometimes you have a problem with the pressure in your ears.
Yeah, the air pressure changes, yeah.
And this is actually very difficult for young babies, because it really hurts them and they start to scream. So you imagine we're sitting, my husband and I, in the plane. Everything looks good, but as we're beginning to take off, their ears start to pop. And one of the tricks to stop the ears popping is to give them something to suck on. So you give them their dummies. The word on the screen is dummy. That's what goes into the baby's mouth, okay, to make it suck on. But of course, my babies, for some reason, their ears must have really hurt them, and they were screaming and screaming and screaming, and there were 2 of them. So my husband was there, I was there, and we're sitting down, and the seat belt sign, you know, in a plane, when you take off, you have to put on your seat belt. The seatbelt sign was still on. So it was impossible for us to move, to stand up, to do anything. And we just had 2 screaming babies. And the rest of the people around us were beginning to feel really uncomfortable, because you do when you have screaming babies.
How did you feel?
Oh, I felt horrible. I felt so embarrassed, right? And very stressed, very stressed. So anyway, we were praying for the seatbelt sign to go off so that we could stand up with the babies and rock them. This is what you do to a baby to try to make it stop crying. So the seatbelt sign went off, and immediately my husband and I, we jumped out of the seats and we stood in the aisle of the plane. The aisle is where the stewardesses, where you walk. You have rows of seats and you have the aisle of the plane. So we stood in the aisle, and we were patting the baby. And I had one baby, and she was facing with her head here. Her head was here, and I'm patting her back. And the problem was, suddenly, because we had fed the babies with the milk before we got on the plane, she was so distressed. She was only 4 months old, that suddenly she vomited and she was sick. And if you've seen a little baby, babies can projectile vomit. So to vomit, another word is to say to be sick. So she was sick, and she was sick with the entire bottle of milk that we had given her. But you have to imagine, I was here, and so she was sick in this direction. And unfortunately, she was sick all over the head of a businessman. The businessman was sitting in his seat, in his suit and in his tie. Fortunately, he had no hair. He was bald. So that was the only redeeming factor, that his hair wasn't full of vomit, but his head was full of vomit, and he had vomit all the way down his suit. And the last word in my anecdote is mortified. I was mortified. Mortified means when you feel so terrible that you basically can't move. You are, again, gobsmacked, like in the previous anecdote. But when you are mortified, you just want to die. I just wanted to sink into a hole and disappear. I felt so embarrassed. And that was the most disastrous flight I'd ever had. And the problem was, I was holding the baby, so I could do nothing for this poor man. Because normally if you do something wrong, you want to go and help somebody and get them a towel or something like that. But I had to hold the baby. I couldn't put her down because it's not safe in a plane. There was no seat. There was nowhere to put her. My husband couldn't help me because he had the other baby. And we were totally helpless. And this poor man was just covered in vomit. So if you're out there listening, I still think of you, and I'm still so mortified.
Was he annoyed? Did he say anything, or was he okay?
He was marvelous. He was a wonderful man, because obviously we apologized. He was a German businessman, and we apologized. And I said to him, look, I'll give you my phone number, and please, when you send your suit to the cleaners, we'll pay for the cleaners to get your suit clean. And he said to me, I have children. Don't worry. He said, sit down. You're having a terrible time. Don't worry. Just concentrate on your babies. And he was so kind. So that was really lucky that my daughter was sick on the right man.
Your daughter's got good taste.
Yes.
But I do sympathize, because last Christmas we flew to Italy just before the lockdown in Spain last December, and a similar situation. We were waiting to get onto the plane, to board the plane. And, sometimes there's a delay and you're waiting in a long queue of people and you're very close together. And just in front of us, a young couple had a baby who was sick, all over the floor. And it was the smell. And they tried to clean it up, and we were passing tissues and passing bottles of water. And it was because we were in a closed space, the smell was really, really overpowering. But there's nothing anybody can say, because it's a baby, and babies do that.
Yeah, they do.
That's what they do.
We've got some lovely comments there. Ruth says, it was lucky that I wasn't in the US. There was a good chance he could have sued me. Good vocabulary, yes. Ruth. Yeah, you're quite right. To sue somebody, which means to take you to court, do legal proceedings, so that I would have to pay him compensation money. Yeah, definitely. Yes, I was very lucky with the person who did that. Yeah.
And Christine says, lucky for you, he was bald. Every cloud has a silver lining.
Absolutely, Christine. Absolutely.
Ro said, where was the man from? He was from Germany, Ro, a German businessman.
Lovely German businessman. If he's out there, I love him still.
Rafa said earlier that his most disastrous flight happened in Germany too. Maybe, Rafa, you can come on when we finish with our anecdotes and tell your story, because we would love to hear about your story and what happened to you. And I'll just make sure that you can see along the bottom of the screen, that's the link you need to type into your browser. It works well with Google Chrome. And I'll also put that link a bit later when we've finished in the chat room. If you want to come in and say hi and tell us an anecdote to practice your English, you're very welcome.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay.
So next one, what was your disastrous flight then, Craig?
My most disastrous flight was from Delhi to Leh. Now, Delhi, as I'm sure you know, is the capital of India. So we were traveling in India, my wife and I, a few years ago. And Leh is a very small place in the north of India. So let me introduce my words. Foothills, twin engine, deafening noise, cotton wool, Fanta orange, runway turbulence. To steep? No, that's a mistake. I think it should just be steep. So let me quickly correct that if I can. Should be steep. To make it and to circle back.
This one sounds scary.
Well, it was scary. What am I doing? Here we are. Yeah. It was scary and also disastrous at the same time. So Leh, that place I mentioned earlier, is in the foothills of the Himalayas. And the Himalayas are very tall mountains in Nepal and the north of India. And the foothills are the smaller mountains at the base, at the bottom of the Himalayas. So we were flying from Delhi to the north of India to this place called Leh, where we were planning to spend a week walking around villages and the foothills of the Himalayas. And the plane that took us there was a very small twin-engine plane, probably very similar to the plane in Lynne's first anecdote that took her from Botswana. And it had two propellers on the wings and just two seats either side of the plane, with the aisle, as Lynne mentioned, in the middle for the flight attendants to walk down. So we boarded the plane. To board means to get on the plane. We boarded the plane. We took our seats. The propellers started moving, and there was this deafening noise. It was really, really loud. And then the flight attendant walked down the aisle in her uniform with cotton wool she gave us for our ears.
Really?
So we put this cotton wool. It was part of the in-flight service, this cotton wool. And then she came past with a plastic tray with a big plastic bottle of Fanta orange and plastic cups. And that was the in-flight service. So she gave us, it's quite opposite to your brand new plane.
Tonic. It was the
and
food.
Your gin and tonic. We got a plastic cup of Fanta orange. And then the plane took off from Delhi and flew to Leh. When we approached Leh in the air, it was a beautiful, there were beautiful mountains and snow on the top and fantastic scenery. And then in the distance, we saw what looked to be a very, very small runway in the middle of these mountains. And I said to my wife, who was sitting next to me, I'm sure it looks very small because we're flying high and we're a long way away. But as we got closer, we still saw a very, very short, very, very small runway in the middle of these mountains. So the plane started to descend and got ready to land on the runway. And there was a lot of crosswind. The wind was blowing across the plane. So the turbulence really shook the plane from left to right, and the wings were doing this. And the pilot took the plane in too steep. So instead of going gradually down, he just went down too quickly. And we noticed that he didn't have enough runway to land the plane. So he needed to pull up and go up without the wheels touching the ground.
Oh my
and
gosh.
Then the plane circled around again to do the same thing. So we did a big circle and then he came into land and the same thing happened a second time. There was lots of turbulence.
Oh,
He
no.
didn't have enough runway. He couldn't touch the runway and the plane went up. And my wife she had the window seat. So she had the view. And I was and on the third try, on the third attempt, the pilot, after circling back again, actually managed to land on the runway safely. So I think that was my most disastrous experience in a small airplane, in a twin-engine plane.
You should have had your parachute. You see, if you had your parachute, you were experienced. You could have just jumped out.
I needed a parachute. That's what I needed. Exactly.
Very good. That was scary, though. That must be very scary.
It was terrifying.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Christine's come up with another lovely thing. He was a seasoned pilot, obviously.
He had a lot of experience. Yeah. Thankfully, he did have a lot of experience, but we didn't know what was happening because all we saw was this flight attendant with Fanta Orange and this cotton wool, and we thought, what kind of airline is this? We didn't think the pilot would be seasoned in such a situation, so we were nervous. We were very nervous.
I saw earlier, Craig, as well, that somebody's joined us who is a pilot. So
really?
He has something to say about that. It was a little bit previous. He said he was a pilot. That's why he loves flying. So we've got a pilot listening to us. You can tell us if that's a very dangerous place and a dangerous maneuver.
Well, if you are a pilot, come in and tell us your worst flight. We'd be very interested to hear your worst experience as a pilot. That would be wonderful to hear.
I'm just looking at the time, Craig, and it's actually, we've only got 20 minutes left. So maybe if people want to come in now, maybe that would be a good idea, because I'm not sure whether we're going to have time for the rest of the anecdotes. We're telling stories.
What we could do in that case, thank you for saying that. What we can do is I'll put the link in the chat box again. So it's in the chat box. It's at the bottom of the screen. We'll wait and see if anybody comes in to tell us an anecdote. In the meantime, while we're waiting, we can go to number 3 and see if, and we'll stop if somebody joins us, of course.
Lovely. That's a good idea. All right, then. So the third one was the longest flight. Is that right?
Yes.
The longest flight. Well, my longest ever flight was Spain to New Zealand, because my family emigrated. I'm English, but my family emigrated to New Zealand. So they all live in New Zealand now. And I'm the only one that is left in Europe. So I have to go to New Zealand regularly. And I don't think you can fly. I don't think you can fly any further, really. Probably.
No, it's the opposite side of the world, isn't it? Exactly.
It is. It's completely the opposite side of the world. Can you put my vocabulary up? And then we'll have a look at the vocabulary. All right. So we've got some flights there. Change flights, direct flight, stopovers. The journey took, I'll tell you how long it took, door to door. All right. Airport assistance, double buggy, locked in the finger, jet lag, weepy, horrendous.
Locked in the finger. You had double buggy before. You used double buggy with the other flights
before. Yeah. So let me tell you about this. So I'm still with my twins. All of my sagas are traveling with my children. So 2 years later, the previous anecdote was when they were 4 months old. And when they were 20 months old, I wanted to go to New Zealand so that my parents could see my babies. And it's important to go before they were 24 months old, because you pay less money if they are under 2. And I had 2 of them. So I decided to take a trip when they were 20 months old. But this time, unfortunately, my husband could not accompany me on the flight. So I had to fly all the way to New Zealand from Spain.
On your own?
With 2 babies on my own.
Wow.
Now, to fly to New Zealand, you have to change flights. Fortunately, This time I only had to take 3 flights. Sometimes when I fly to New Zealand, I take 5. But this time, on this occasion, I only took 3. So I had to fly from Valencia to Heathrow, then Heathrow to Singapore, and then Singapore to Auckland.
Can I stop you? Can I stop you in the middle? Because Hema wants to come in and speak to us. Hi, Hema.
Oh, great. Hi, Hema.
Hi, Colleen.
Hello. Lovely to see you.
It's good to finally see you.
Uh-huh. Great. Go on. Please tell us your anecdote.
Do you have a story for us, Hema?
I don't have many stories because I have. Hi.
Uh-huh.
Yep, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Because I hear it twice. The same thing. I hear the same things twice.
You're getting reverb. You're getting echoing in your ears?
Yes.
That's strange.
No, possibly she's still on the connection as the show, as well as being on live. Maybe she's got 2 windows open.
Yes. I'm going to. Okay.
You've got some echo there.
Can you hear us better now?
A ver.
Let's see.
Yeah.
Is that better?
I think so.
Great.
Okay, Hema, tell us about your most memorable flight, your longest or your most eventful, the one you remember most, and why?
I remember once I went. Yes, I'm here all the time, but I don't. Okay. Maybe it was because the mobile phone.
Okay. Uh-huh.
I remember once I went to from Madrid to Alicante.
Oh.
And I was pregnant in that moment to my son Álvaro, and I was sleeping from the moment the flight. No, from the moment I was sitting in the seat to the moment the flight landed.
Wow.
You slept all the way through the flight.
And because the air hostess woke me up. If not, I'm sleeping.
Still be on the plane.
And then I remember another one.
Did you have a gin and tonic when the plane took off? Is that why you were sleeping?
No.
No, she was pregnant, Craig. She was pregnant.
I don't usually drink alcohol.
And you have another one? What's the other story?
Once I write in the box. One. No, I have never drink alcohol.
Uh-huh.
Okay, you never drank alcohol.
Well, another one was. Was once we went to Madrid, to Hong Kong and Bali, and then Bali, and first of all we have to land it in Rome, and the plane didn't want to land it because there was a very strong wind. And it was very, very, very scary for a minute.
So there was a lot of turbulence, like in my story.
Yes,
it was moving a lot of turbulence.
Very scary.
It's scary, yeah. Mm-hmm. And you also said on Twitter earlier today that you're scared of rats. You said, not spiders. You don't mind spiders.
Sorry, I don't hear now because I hear all the time.
Okay, you're hearing another thing. Well, look, we're going to say goodbye, Gemma, because I noticed that Felipe is waiting to come in. So we'll try to bring Felipe in to tell his story. Thank you for coming in and speaking to us. It's really good to see you.
Yeah,
Almost
and
in person. Thanks for your story. Oh, Felipe's disappeared. Felipe's gone.
Oh.
That's a shame.
Maybe he'll come back. Okay. Yes, I think maybe if you guys come in, you've got to be careful if you have the live when you come in with the other connection, the HTTPS. If you still have the other window open where you're watching the show, probably you might get interference. So maybe you have to close one and then go in again. Yeah. I don't know. I'm just assuming.
Oh no, that's because it
yeah.
happened also last week with another student when I was with Monica. That he didn't have his earphones in, so the sound was coming out of the computer and into the microphone, and there was a lot of bad echo happening.
Yeah.
Felipe's trying again to come in. Can you hear us, Felipe?
Yep, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Oh,
yes, we can.
Loud and clear. Loud and clear. Hello.
I'm going to start the camera. Well, it's a kind of I'm in the shadows, but I'm here.
Hi.
You look very mysterious.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you have a story for us, Felipe, about flying?
Not very big stories. I haven't traveled too much, but okay. Well, I'm from Chile, so I kind of tell you about my longest flight. It was to Europe. Well, Chile is at the end of the world, so any kind of flight, it's a kind of long. So I traveled from Santiago de Chile to Madrid. I stay over one night in Spain, and then I went to London, and finally to my final destination, that was Stockholm in Sweden.
Oh, wow.
When I was younger, I had the chance to went on exchange studies to Stockholm, but okay, the flight, of course, is quite long.
Yes. And did you fly non-stop, or did you have a stopover? Did you spend one night in London?
Yes, exactly. That's what I wanted to say. Yes, exactly. I stopped over in Spain, and I spent there one night, and then I got to London. I think it was Heathrow, and finally to Stockholm.
Fantastic.
Where are you from in Chile? Where are you from in Chile, Felipe? Are you from Santiago?
From Santiago, yes, the main city, exactly.
Are you there now?
Yeah, I'm still here. Yeah, I would like to be in Europe again. Hopefully next year, if there is a chance, of course.
Of course.
Yeah. Sorry, Lynn, you had another question, I think.
No, I just wanted to ask, when you did that flight with the stopovers, did you fly with different airlines, or was it the same airline all the way?
Yes, exactly. We are different airlines. I don't know how to say it, but there are some group of airlines that work together, like a holding. I don't know how to say it.
They're called alliances.
Alliances, exactly. Alliance. Exactly. So, okay, here in Chile, the biggest airline is called LATAM. In those days, the name was LAN Airlines, and then LAN bought TAM, an airline from Brazil. So now it's called LATAM. When I fly from Santiago to Spain, it was I think it was in LATAM or LAN Airlines in those days. And in Spain, I think it was Iberia. I think that's one of the most common airlines in Spain. And also, when I was on my studies, I traveled a lot to other cities of Europe, but in this kind of low-cost airlines, of course.
Can I ask you one more question? And I think we have to ask you to leave because we have two more people waiting to come in. I saw an advertisement on television today that Iberia Airlines from Spain were advertising how safe their airline is and how they protect you against the coronavirus. Do you feel comfortable at the moment flying, or do you choose not to fly because of the danger of coronavirus?
Yes, I think I will take the I prefer to not flying now because it is a kind of dangerous, of course. Well, it depends on the situation. Maybe if it's something related to my job, I don't know, for example, of course, I will have to do it. But I am staying home the most time as I can. So, okay. But I know that there are a lot of some improvements that they have done to this kind of flights. I don't know if it's because of the virus. We really don't know much about the virus, so it's kind of hard to be really sure that if everything is going to be okay. But fortunately or unfortunately, depends on how you see it. I don't have to fly right now, so well, I'm just waiting for my vacations. Indeed, I would like to fly because I have to take my vacations, but well, I'm kind of waiting to be able to do it. I don't know, maybe in some couple of months. I don't know.
I think Felipe, everybody's waiting. That's the thing. We're waiting for vaccine. We're waiting to fly again safely, so that everybody's waiting. Hey, thank you very much, Felipe.
Yeah, thank you.
We're going to bring in Ruth and Jose, and I think they will be the last because we're nearly out of time. So let's say a quick hello to Ruth.
Hello. Oh, hi.
Live. Oh, welcome. How are you?
Hi.
Hello. Hi. Nice to meet you.
It's okay.
Where are you calling from? Where are you based? Are you in Spain?
We are in a village outside Madrid.
Oh, okay.
Well, first of all, I would like to thank you for this you're doing. It's amazing. I just discovered you by chance. I was just looking at Facebook and I got this notification and I found you, and we are very happy about it. So thank you very much for your time.
We started doing this just after the lockdown in the summer when Lynn and I, and there's another teacher, Monica. So every Wednesday we try to get online for an hour at the same time, 8 o'clock. To give
we'll keep it in mind.
With people. Thank you. Do you have a quick story for us about flying?
Yes. You were talking about long trips, but I have a story about. Well, it's the shortest trip I have made in my life by airplane, and then the connection to another airport. It was in Buenos Aires. In Buenos Aires, there are two airports. It's the aerodrome, which is in the center of the city. And you can take a plane, an internal plane for the country, or to go to Montevideo in Uruguay. They are very close. So the airplane makes like this, and then like this. It's about 20 minutes, half an hour. Wow. And I woke up very early that morning, and I was at the airport at 6 because the plane was at 8 probably, or something like this. But it was very foggy, and in Montevideo there was no radar in the special radar that is used when there's foggy. So it took so much time to wait for the plane. But finally we got the plane. We go to Montevideo. We had to work there. We worked half an hour. We have a lunch, and we came back to the airport in Buenos Aires. But I had to come back to Madrid, and my plane was that afternoon at 8, and I arrived so late to the aeródromo in the center of Buenos Aires that I had to run a lot to arrive to take my plane at 8 in the afternoon in the airport of Ezeiza, which is about 50 kilometers from the center. So I took a taxi. It was a young guy. It was Friday, 31st of July. And Friday, in the big cities, everybody wants to go out of the city. So I told him, do you think that we can arrive to the airport at 8? Because my plane is at 8 and I need to be there at 8 o'clock.
Earlier.
Yeah.
Oh, it's difficult. Okay, so
good tip.
How much do you think it costs from here to the airport? Well, about 60 that was pesos, the Argentinian pesos, 60 pesos. And but you think that we can arrive? I don't know. It's difficult. Okay, if you arrive before 8.
Before 7:30 or 8.
No. I had to be there at 8.
Okay.
If you arrive there before 8, I will pay you 120 pesos.
Double.
What?
Yeah.
Okay, so I never saw a taxi driver driving so fast as this one did. You imagine the street, the highway. It was plenty of cars, traffic jam everywhere. But he did so well. But during my run in the taxi, I realized, oh my God, I think I have not a lot of money in my pocket. Let me think.
Oh.
So I realized that I had some few pesos from Argentina, some few US dollars, because I always have some US dollars, and some pesetas. So I counted all the money, and I saw that I had the equivalent to 120 pesos. So well, I thought I will say nothing. Maybe when we arrive, I'll tell him that I have this little issue. So when I arrived there, I explained to him, thank you very much. This is the money, the pesos, the pesetas, and the US dollars. And well, the pesos he knew, the dollars also, the pesetas. Monopoly money. Okay, and my car, I told him, okay, if you have any problem, call me, I will send you the money. So fantastic.
And you made the flight. You had enough time to take the flight. And
I called the airport. I told them I was arriving late. There was a huge queue of people traversing the custom. Well, you know, the custom and for the check-in, for
control.
when you have to open your baggage, etc. And some police came, and I explained, I call you, I have to take this aeroplane. It was a big aeroplane, and they were waiting for me. So I had no queue at all. I had no scanner, no nothing. And I went directly to the aeroplane, and I was the last one. And
but you got
I got it. Yeah.
But you made it in the end. That's good. That sounds like a VIP trip. No, you were a very important person.
I think that anecdote is beats ours. I think that's better than the ones we told. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for coming in. It was really nice to talk to you.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the class.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Wow, what an incredible story. Amazing.
Yeah. Great. Well, we have enough material for another class. It seems everybody has got great anecdotes. So
we could do the same thing next time, because I had thought of one when Jose was telling his story. I remembered another story about being late, but maybe I'll save that for another time.
That's right.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much to the people who came in. And I'm seeing a message from Hema. She said, please excuse me, I was very nervous. Thank you so much, like always, and take care. But it was wonderful, Hema, that you came in and that you tried your English. And remember, we're kind of, there's no pressure to speak perfect English. Yeah, this is a place where you can practice listening to us, where you can learn some vocabulary, and we're all communicating, we're all understanding everything, and that's language, isn't it? That's the main thing about language.
That's why we're here, because we want to get to know you, we want to speak to you, and we want to give you the opportunity to improve. And if you don't come in like Gemma did and Jose and Felipe, if you don't try, then there's going to be very little improvement. So please, next time, make the effort, come in and come and say hi. And if you're interested in a personal online tutor to improve your English privately, Lynn, where can they go?
Well, they can take a taxi in Montevideo, pay 120 pesetas, get to the airport, bribe your way on the plane, fly to Valencia and you could come and see me. But it's even easier because I'm an online teacher. So if you go to my website, putitlikethis.com, you don't have to fly anywhere. You only have to contact me. And if you're interested in classes online, I'd be delighted to help you. Mm-hmm. And also to Craig as well. Craig's also an online teacher, aren't you, Craig? You've got lots of courses too.
Yes, although I don't do the same teaching as Lynn. I don't get online at the moment with people over the internet, but we do have lots of courses that are free on mentioningles.com, and there are some paid courses there if you're interested also. And if you like listening to audio to improve your English, we do have a podcast that's free. Go to inglespodcast.com. And the podcast is also available on Spotify and eBooks and iTunes and on all the other places where you can listen to podcasts. So thanks very much for joining. It's been a lot of fun. We've thoroughly enjoyed it. Yeah. And we'll be back again. I'll be back again next week with Monica and Lynn, hopefully in 2 weeks. Yeah. 2 weeks'
time. Yeah, sure. So Great. Stay safe, everybody. And enjoy. If anybody's taking a flight, enjoy it.
Be careful. Wear your mask and wash your hands.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everyone.